Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and I would like to address the pardon of Kathleen Folbigg in Australia. This happened in June. Kathleen Folbigg had been in prison for many years for the murder of her 4 children. She had been convicted on the belief that she caused their deaths. And I'll put a link below to my video that I did on why I think she was convicted and why I think she was convicted correctly. So I'm not going to go into a long explanation here of why the jury likely found her guilty. It was not just because 4 children died that were hers, but things that she had said, things that she had written, her behaviors that all went together and led to her conviction. But she has been pardoned by the governor of New South Wales in June. And since then, there's been all these articles that have come out in scientific journals and in law journals, and they all have a similar headline to this. And this one comes from Science Alert. And the headline is, "An extremely rare mutation landed a woman in prison for murder." And this is what most of these headlines insinuate, that she went to jail because all 4 children died of a genetic mutation. There is no evidence of this. There is no proof of this at all. That is not why she went to prison. She went to prison because the jury found her guilty for many, many reasons. And the genetics were not on the table at that time. This is true. So one could say she deserves another trial or bring in the genetic information and see whether it holds up. But this is not what all the scientific journals are saying. And this is not what the Innocence Project type people are saying. They're saying, see, this woman, it was misogyny. They didn't like the way she was a mother, and therefore they had it out for her. And just because she wrote some things that made her look extremely guilty, well, that was just unreasonable. And so she shouldn't have ever been convicted. But the jury found her guilty. They viewed her as a psychopath, and she exhibited what is called Munchausen syndrome by proxy, and that is behavior of psychopaths, specifically, usually female, where they harm or kill children to gain attention. So unlike a male psychopath in a violent way, might be a serial killer that goes out and attacks a woman walking down the street, rapes and murders her, and he does that over and over. A psychopathic female who exhibits Munchausen syndrome by proxy, she is also a serial killer, but she kills her own children or some other people's children, but she kills children in order to get that attention, that power and control that she craves. And I explained that in my video. The link below has my video that I originally analyzed the entire case. So when you want all the details about why I think she was guilty, why the jury found her guilty, please go and listen and watch that video. Now, I want to read to you a couple things from this article and give you my concern about what they're saying, why I'm skeptical about this pardon. All right. It says here, so she had a big team that fought to get her out of prison for a really long time. And they did lots of research and gathering of, quote, evidence. All this evidence culminated in a petition for Folbigg to be pardoned. This petition was signed by 90 scientists and sent to the governor of New South Wales in 2021. Now, 90 scientists. And so here people go, see, look, this is scientific evidence. These children died of genetic mutations. And all these scientists said, yes, this is so. And why wouldn't you believe 90 scientists? You're not even a scientist, Pat Brown. Why don't you believe these 90 scientists who are willing to put their names on that petition to say, we think that these conditions these children had killed them? All right. I'll get to that. Well, I'll get to it right now. Just because you can find 90 scientists to say something doesn't mean it's true. That's not evidence. They're saying they were willing to sign a petition, and they could sign the petition for many reasons. That they just don't believe she killed 4 children, that they they think she's so female, and they hate to see a female in prison because they love science. And anytime science is added to some kind of legal issue, they love it and they sign for it. Maybe they truly believe it. But I don't know who these 90 scientists are. I don't know why they signed this. I would like to see their explanation, every one of them. But we don't have that. At least I don't. All right. Now, here is the next part, which I think is the most important. All right. The petition said that Folbigg's conviction was, quote, based on the proposition that the likelihood of 4 children from one family dying of natural causes is unlikely to be virtually impossible. This is flawed logic. All right, this is the most important thing here. First of all, they're claiming that she was convicted only because 4 kids from one family died and therefore she did it. They're ignoring all the other evidence that went into the conviction. Her behavioral evidence, the things she wrote in her diary. There's other reasons she was convicted other than the fact that all 4 children died, although that is pretty darn rare, let me tell you. Usually when you have all 4 children dying in a family, unless there's some real obvious reason that isn't homicide, it may well be a female serial killer, Munchausen syndrome by proxy. All right, but here's the thing that I find really interesting. They claim this is flawed logic. To think that all 4 children in a family dying is unrealistic, virtually impossible. It's flawed logic. Well, let me tell you something. This pardon that is supposedly scientific evidence that supposedly supports all these 4 children died of a genetic mutation is horrendously flawed logic, ridiculously flawed logic. Let me explain. All right. There were 2 genetic mutations. She was unlucky in that sense. And, it's funny in that, you wonder why would she have 4 children with 2 different rare genetic mutations? I don't know. So that's one of those weird things. Or maybe there's way more people in the world who have that, but never tested for it. So they don't know. So anyway, the first one is the daughters. The daughters shared one. It was called CALM, C-A-L-M. And it has, I looked up how many kids died of this. Supposedly 137 137 kids had it. 27% died of it. So basically 1 out of 4 children. And the average age of the deaths were 6 years. Now, using that scientific evidence, it would say that if only 1 out of 4 of those children died of this genetic mutation, then why would 100% of her children die of this? Not 1 out of 4, not even 1 out of 2, but 2 out of 2. That's incredibly high. And the average age of her 2 daughters dying was 14 months, not 6 years. So what is the likelihood that both girls would die of this mutation? Both girls would die so early of this mutation. That's flawed logic to say that this is reasonable. All right, let's look at the boys. It gets even worse. The 2 boys died of another genetic rarity that they have tested mice for. And apparently these mice that had this genetic thing, 50% of them died. And it was an epileptic type thing. I can't find one study that shows humans die of this. So 1 out of 2 mice die of this, but no humans. And her children, both her boys, it wasn't 1 out of 2, it was 2 out of 2. Wow, she's got home runs every place on these genes. So when you look at the statistics of her children are not in sync with the statistics of how many actually die of this disease and the time that they die of these diseases, at what age. And I'm sorry, you cannot compare mice to humans. If you haven't done a human study, you cannot say those 2 boys died of that genetic abnormality. You cannot. So that is not scientific. So when you sit there and you say, oh my goodness, there's scientific evidence. It isn't. It's scientific theory, guesswork. And it's been used for this case, and it is flawed. It is absolutely 100% flawed. And it should not be said to have caused all 4 children's deaths, because there is not even one proof that any of these children died of these genetic mutations. And even if they did, all 4 shouldn't have died of these genetic mutations. You'd be lucky if 1 died of these genetic mutations. It'd be extremely rare that 2 would die of these genetic mutations, but all 4 of them, what is that? Virtually impossible. So yeah, it's flawed logic to think all 4 of these children died of genetic mutations. Now it gets even worse. Isn't it strange that all 4 children died of these genetic mutations while they were in her care? They didn't die at the babysitter's house. They didn't die at the grocery store. They didn't die at the doctor's office. They didn't die any time except when they were only in Kathleen Folbigg's care. So when we talk about statistics again, how statistically, what is that word? Impossible. Impossible. Would it be that all 4 children just happened to die only with Kathleen Folbigg and nowhere else, and with no one else? So I think this pardon is highly flawed. And to say that her children all died of these genetic disorders and science has proven it is completely not true. Now, if you want to give her, if she was given another trial and this information was brought in and they could prove it in any way that was better than what I've seen, well, then fine. But she just got a pardon based on flawed science and flawed statistics. And I don't think you have to be a scientist to understand this. Anyway, those are my thoughts on this. Do check out my video with a full explanation of why I think she was convicted. And she is free now. She's been pardoned. Her conviction has not been overturned. But if it is, then she can sue for a whole lot of money for false imprisonment. So at any rate, those are my thoughts again. And I hope you if you just want to think about it yourself, to think about the logic of it. All right. Anyway, if you're new to my channel, please do like and subscribe. And yeah, I'm glad you were here. Thanks. Bye.